Hello and welcome to the Peppermint Philosophy podcast. I'm just sort of riffing and we'll see where this goes. So if you've managed to find your way here, you're probably looking a bit too deep into the internet, and I'm not entirely sure how you managed to find your way here, but welcome. As said before, this is the Peppermint Philosophy podcast where I, your host, Adam, will talk to you about whatever's on my mind, really. Just sort of, this was something I wanted to do. Just gonna sort of get into it. Grab yourself a drink. Could be some tea, peppermint tea, a beer, or maybe something stronger. And let's just have an hour or so of thinking, coming up with some ideas. This will probably be absolutely dog shit, but we'll just see how it goes. So, for the last 3 months, probably longer, I don't even know anymore, to be honest. Most of the world has been under lockdown as a result of the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic. If you, for some reason, don't actually know about this, then you're probably somewhere in the Amazon rainforest. That was a really shit joke. Be ready for loads of those. So because I'm not used to doing this, and this is totally new to me, I'm just gonna say things trying to be funny, and I'm really probably not gonna be that funny, so I'd appreciate a little pity laugh. Just acknowledge that I'm finding my feet. I'm finding my feet. I'm having a go. I'm just diving into something new, and to some extent, that's what I want to talk about today, because I kind of want to talk about new beginnings. And I think that new beginnings are something that a lot of us in this lockdown have actually been sort of discovering about ourselves. Because I think for the first time in probably most of our lives, we've been put in this position where basically we've been kind of told that we have to just stay home, not really meet up with people that much, just sort of be left to our own devices. And for some of us, maybe that's just led to us doing the same old thing, playing video games, just not really doing that much. Hopefully for a lot of people, this has been a nice sort of time of self-reflection, where people have actually kind of had a go at trying something new and maybe experiencing something different, picking up a new skill, or exercising more, drinking less, that kind of thing. I think really for me, that's kind of what this has all been. I've kind of had a chance to sit back and have a go at I make it sound more profound than it is, but assessing my life, having a think about what I'm happy about, what I'm not so happy about. And I've ended up delving deeper into hobbies. So I'm a runner. I enjoy running quite a lot. In fact, this year it was basically my resolution almost. I didn't really make a resolution, but in the back of my mind I was thinking 2020 is going to be the year that I really dive deep into running. Now, a year ago, I did my first half marathon, which was the first time I'd kind of, sorry, that was my phone, sort of semi-seriously got into running. I was consistently running way more than I used to. And I thought 2020 is going to be the year I'm going to go for some new achievements. I'm going to run more half marathons, do one a month. I'm going to run a marathon in this time. And then hopefully, who knows, maybe I would start doing what is called an ultra marathon, which is, considered probably the kind of thing that a sociopath would do. But for runners, it's kind of like, that's like a really big achievement, because it's very difficult I was thinking, I'm kind of getting really into it. I love long distance running. I love like the sort of way it clears your head, You get almost like into a meditative state where you can just sort of clear your mind, stop thinking about the bullshit that's kind of been clouding you all day, and you just sort of go for it. But yeah, so I kind of decided this was going to be the year I just gave it a go, kicked in all of those achievements. And then, I was doing good. I was doing pretty good. I'd run 200 kilometers in 1 month, and I'd managed to sort of keep up some stuff. It was like up and down. And then March comes around, we go into lockdown. My work's kind of stopped, so I'm a PhD student. It's probably, no one's going to fucking know who I am. So I'm a PhD student. I'm researching tropical disease, looking at drug targets, potentially to try and kill the parasite, which I'm working on. Anyway, that's a total side note. But all of that work was stopped, and I was told, basically you have to go home and just wait it out. So I thought this was going to be a great opportunity for me to actually properly get into running, because I have no other choice really. It's either that or sit on my ass. So I was running even more. And then about a month into lockdown, I ran a marathon, which was pretty wild. I imagine marathons are hard enough when you've got crowds cheering you on and aid stations or whatever, but I had to basically plan it out on my own. Fortunately, I had some great friends who were willing to come and drop off some supplies and cycle alongside, so it wasn't all bad. But yeah, I ended up running that, and it was a very sort of strange experience actually, because up to that point I'd sort of never run beyond probably about 22, 23k, which is just over a half marathon. So I was kind of diving into it a little bit just to see if I could. And I kind of just went along. Pardon me. Ran along. 3 hours in, I think I hit the 30k mark, and my legs just felt like lead. And that's when the real struggle began. And I ended up with this sort of, it was very much like a mental game. I went through weird mood swings. I remember at one point, a mate of mine, we were we send stupid videos to each other to, basically coax each other on and call each other out and, call each other pussies or whatever, because we're not running. We sort of ran. I was sending him shit along the way the whole time, and basically I had to stop because there was just a point after the 30k mark where I was just overwhelmed with emotion. I was listening to some music, and I was just like, if I send this guy a video now, I'm gonna fucking cry. But then as soon as that was over, I had a second wind. I just kept on going, and I was running like mad, but then it just sort of hit a point where I was deteriorating, and it was just a real slog to the end. But I'm glad I did it. There came a point where I was quite aware that my mind was sort of switching off. It was just sort of focusing on the pain, just deal with it, muscle through, just have a go. But yeah, so that was, I don't even know how I got onto that story, really. I guess I was talking about new beginnings. So yeah, new beginnings. I was, getting into running more deeply. I've been, ever since that, been sticking with it, going really hard on the paint, and just cracking on. And I think there's been definitely a lot of people taking that sort of approach to lockdown, and I think that's the best way to do it, because really you can't just sit there playing video games the whole time. It's just kills your brain, really. Now I sound like my parents. So one of the main reasons I've been thinking about new beginnings recently. Actually, before I get into this, I should kind of explain what the purpose of this podcast is, really. Because, to be honest, I don't really give a shit if anyone listens or not. I think, really, this is all... So recently I've been kind of getting into, philosophy. Well, I say recently. For the last year or so, I've been getting really into philosophy. I'm going to just sort of shout out to absolutely no one because no one's going to be listening. But the Philosophize This podcast, which basically kind of... It's a very educational podcast, which just sort of takes you through the history from ancient times, of philosophy with a sort of relatively unbiased sort of view of it, and it's just sort of explaining what the thinkers were thinking. And and some maybe, refutations and stuff, but it's basically sort of the history of philosophy. I've sort of been listening to it, and as I've sort of developed, with my sort of understanding of philosophy, I've kind of come to terms with the fact that it's important that everyone has their own philosophy or set of philosophies that they sort of adhere to. And I don't want to say, it makes it sound when I say that like it's a religion, like you adhere to, these principles or this sort of philosophy, but that's not what I'm saying at all. Basically, we all need some kind of... We need to come up with some sort of, I guess, framework that structures how we approach life, how we approach others and think almost, because it's so easy these days to just sort of be dragged along by everything that's going on. And so a big influence for me has just been really reading and getting into the philosophy of Stoicism. And I wouldn't say Stoicism, I feel, gets a really bad rap because a lot of people kind of imagine it like Vulcans in Star Trek, where it's just like completely devoid of emotion. You're cutting out your sort of humanity, I guess. But I don't think it's that at all. I think it's a philosophy that, I guess, is meant to... Now I'm going to get this completely wrong, aren't I? But I think Stoicism to me is more about coming to terms with the nature of things around you, understanding that there are things that are out of your control, and that it's too many people these days can get dragged around by these things that are out of your control. You get so concerned with them and they completely consume your life, and in the end you can end up just getting lost in this hailstrom of just bullshit, right? And I've had that recently. I've sort of realised that there's so much shit that I was seeing on social media, and it was really just twisting me and hurting and sort of making me angry. And it was for no good reason, because it was all shit that I couldn't do anything about. I wasn't in a position of power to do anything, to change anything. And so I've sort of been using Stoicism or understanding Stoicism better, as well as other philosophies, Taoism. I can't even think of any now, but essentially trying to use these as a sort of framework to develop my own sort of views on, the best way to handle different situations, because it can be a real struggle when you feel out of control, and so often things happen all around you that you can't do anything about, but they frustrate you. And I think it's important at that point to try and center yourself and to try and kind of refocus, look at trying to improve yourself, right? Because, there are so many things in the world that you can't control. You can't control who likes and hates you. Well, no, sorry. I guess you can, because, you've got to sort of, it's how you present yourself. But there are things that you just simply can't control. You can't control if someone is going to react in a certain way, if a politician is going to come up with some law that you hate. I mean, until you vote, you can't really do anything about that. But throughout all of these things where, the world's sort of going on around you, the one thing that you are in control of is yourself, right? You might agree or disagree with me, but that's my thought, my opinion. And I think that often you can avoid so much stress, so much anger, so much needless energy wasted if you just focus that energy on trying to improve yourself. And in doing that, you can improve people around you, you can improve yourself, you can set yourself as an example. And I think if everyone was doing that, we could all, or we'd eventually have enough small circles around us that the whole world could be improved. But, I mean, obviously, it's up to an individual to make that choice to do that. I understand, being sort of attached to what's going on around you. But anyway, again, I've gone on this fucking tangent. I guess the point I'm trying to make, I'm trying to ring it, circle it back round, is that a big part of, a key part of Stoicism, of many philosophies, many Eastern philosophies like Buddhism, Taoism, there's a big focus on meditation. And it's not just, meditation where it's calming your mind and trying to imagine nothing. It's meditation reflecting, in some ways meditation, I guess, is the wrong word, because it's more like reflection, self-reflection. Judging how well you did in the situation in the day, being truthful to yourself and just sort of, being honest, brutally honest, because deep down you know what you were happy about, what you weren't happy about, what you'd prefer to do better if you had another go at it next time, things like that. And I think that's the kind of meditation I'm talking about. And so as such, I've started journaling. It started off very simple as just sort of, this is what I've done today, this is what I like, this is what I didn't like. But I guess sort of thinking more on Stoic philosophers, especially like Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, the emperor philosopher. There was a sort of big consideration. So there's a book called Meditations, which is basically his journal. It's his personal thoughts, his views on things that he did, snippets of who he was as a person, just reflection, right? And I'm trying to shift my journaling more in that direction, where it's, I suppose, a philosophical journal, where you're writing it for yourself to look back on, to see moments of strength and inspiration, things that you did well, things that you didn't do well, things you're proud of and not so proud of. And I think that's important. But as part of this, and to keep me on track, really, I want this podcast to basically be me meditating, reflecting on thoughts and ideas, trying to expand and think about them, just talking into a microphone, so that I have the chance to have a kind of verbal exchange with you, even though I'm literally just talking into a microphone right now. But the idea is that I want to kind of have this moment of self-reflection where I'm just talking as if talking to someone else about these things. Because I think that's important. And because, I'm vain, and deep down I kind of want to be popular and famous like most people, I think. I'm going to be putting this out on the internet. And yeah, that's probably, I guess, if I were to actually be critical of myself, I think that's, yeah, it is what it is. Of course, there's part of me that hopes that it picks up and loads of people resonate with it and whatever, but to be honest, I don't really give a shit. I'm just going to put it out there. If this kind of stuff helps or encourages you to do something similar, great, I'm happy. And yeah, hopefully it can get you thinking a little bit. Oh, that's really it's such a really fucking egotistical thing to say. It's I really hope that this helps you. But no, the main thing is to help me. So yeah, back on track to the new beginnings. Fucking hell, I've recorded for 20 minutes. Now, I haven't even really gotten to the point. I've talked about running. I've talked about okay. I guess all of these things are new beginnings, right? And the reason I'm thinking about new beginnings really, partially because of coronavirus, I probably said that earlier anyway, so I'm just going to contradict myself, but part of why this has been on my mind is because I'm going through a new beginning at the moment. I've moved out of a flat where it was basically a student flat, and now I've kind of moved into my own place for the first time ever. And it's one of those weird things, I think, especially when you're a young adult. When I was 18, I went off to uni. And at university, you very much feel I guess over time, you feel like you're becoming independent and that you're sort of living away from home and whatnot. But I feel like a lot of people, when push comes to shove, very few actually ever live on their own. And, they go through uni either, in the first year or so, living with random people. They make friends and they live with their friends. And then eventually afterwards, they either, get a job, and some of them might get their own place, but a lot of them end up going home, living at home, with family again, or maybe getting a place with friends to, save money. And I'm in a very fortunate position here because where I'm living is very cheap to rent. So I've managed to actually get a relatively decently priced apartment to myself, basically. And it's very nice. But it's been I've been thinking about it as I've been unpacking over the last couple of days and, really getting settled in now. Today's going to be my first night sleeping here. But it's interesting. It's exciting, right? I've never, I've been away from home for almost 6 years. And in all that time, I've never actually lived on my own. So I think it's really quite an exciting prospect. I'm looking forward to it. Sure, I'm sure it's going to be lonely or whatever. I'm sure a lot of people have that kind of view. But one of the things that's been great is just, I feel like when you're living in a shared house or a shared flat, you basically just have a room, and then the communal areas you kind of all mutually kind of share, and you kind of might put a TV in there and a games console, but it's not really yours. And now I've just kind of put my shit everywhere, I've spread out. I've got hardly anything in my bedroom except for my clothes, like it's supposed to be, right? And I feel like it's an exciting prospect because I can actually sort of live like an adult for the first time ever. And it's weird because I feel like so many young people these days don't get to that point, at least until later, because there's constantly this sort of almost a tradition to move in with other people and save money and all of that sort of stuff. But I guess I'm one of the lucky ones. But yeah, it's been a nice opportunity to just sort of reflect on that, to think about the kinds of things that I'm doing, that I want to do. This podcast, for example. So me and a group of friends for about 2 years now have been talking about starting a podcast. And, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you know, group of friends where you just sort of, yeah, we're gonna do a podcast where we just shoot the shit and do nothing and whatever. We just we've never really done it, you know. We all got mics, we all got the equipment, we're all ready to go. And for one reason or another, we just never could find the time where we were all free. We never set aside time. We just never recorded anything, right? And that's half the battle. You know, you end up with this whole, you sit in the situation where it's like, you're all ready to go, but no one takes initiative. Or when someone does, you know, other people just fall silent or do nothing. And I feel like, I'm probably going to share this with my boys later, so I don't want to slag them off too much. I love you guys, but it's just been like one of those things. I feel like we've all kind of had this idea, we wanted to do it, but we're just not doing it, and that's the problem. I think a lot of people can find that happens in their life, you know. It's easy to blame other people, right? But we're all responsible for the problems that we have as well. I mean, we play a part in it. Like, it's easy. I've definitely thought, we can't do it this week because that guy, you know, he wasn't free. He didn't want to do it. He's not responding, whatever. But, like, I mean, we could have done something. Could have just been like, fuck it. It's just going to be you and me. We're just going to sit down. We're going to chat. We're going to do whatever. But I was kind of thinking, like, last night not last night, sorry. I'm just chatting shit now. It was probably a few nights ago. I was just lying there trying to get sleep. I couldn't get sleep because I just struggle sleeping anyway, naturally. And I was living in a shit flat which was just student-y shit. And literally, so the flat that I lived in, just as a side note, so where I live, there are tons of seagulls everywhere. Semi-famous for it. Seagulls will literally attack you on the seafront. They will attack you on the seafront if you have your food open and you're just sort of not really watching your back. But basically where I lived was right next to one of their breeding grounds, as well as a breeding ground for pigeons. We had like baby pigeons on our windowsills and shit. But yeah, so where I was living was right next to this. And my room specifically was at the arse of the house, and it looked out over the arse of this whole town, basically, because it was the back of every building, and they're all built up to shit. It's so ugly. But on every windowsill, there were about 5 pigeons, and then just a bit further, there were about 1 million seagulls, and you just hear those little bastards, those fucking sky velociraptors, just squawking all fucking night, and it was hell. So that probably didn't help. And because it's so fucking boiling at the moment, I was there with my windows wide open. I just couldn't help it. To be honest, I got kind of used to it after a while. But anyway, side note over. What was I actually originally talking about? So this is the problem. This is the problem with this train of thought shit, this model of doing a podcast. I'm just going to say shit, get sidetracked, and then forget where I was. So bear that in mind, and many apologies. But, you know, it's just verbal diarrhea because this is my first podcast and I haven't really hit my stride. I'm just sort of going for it. Right, there we are. I end up scrolling back and finding where I got onto this side note to remember what I was talking about. Now that I'm talking about this, I'm probably going to forget again. Anyway, so yeah, a few nights ago when I was sort of lying down in bed trying to get to sleep and was being kept up by seagulls and the heat or whatever the fuck it was, I was just lying there and I was thinking, so me and a different friend actually had an idea for a podcast called Peppermint Philosophy, you know. And maybe I'll tell that story later, another time. But, you know, I was thinking, you know, fuck it. I mean, I'm doing this sort of journaling thing. I'm trying to focus on my own personal philosophy and trying to figure it all out. What better way to do that than to have a podcast where, you know, you're just sort of talking about it. You're leaving it open-ended. You're just speaking your mind, trying to come up with some shit, and hopefully learn something whilst doing. Hello, testing. Okay, I think I just nudged my USB a little bit there, so it just cut me off. But what was I saying? Yeah, so hopefully you're learning something whilst doing it, and I can use this. I say you, but I mean me. Hopefully I can come up with some ideas, think things through, just brainstorm, because I think, again, another thing that a lot of people don't do, and this, I'm going on all these sorts of fucking tangents, but remember the common theme is new beginnings, right? I think another new beginning that a lot of people would benefit from is just going out and just discussing things with people, discussing them with themselves, reflecting on things, because we can often get into these bubbles where we know our opinion, but we protect it, right? And it's not necessarily we know we're protecting it. And I don't mean that by, we don't go, we're not shutting ourselves off from other opinions, but sometimes that's the case, of course. But what I'm meaning is that it's a subconscious protection. We don't seek challenge for our own opinions. We don't challenge ourselves on our opinions, right? It's so easy to just have an idea, to have a view, have a team that we support of something. Shut out the rest of it. Ignore it completely. Ignore it from ourselves. Even when, and this is a big problem when it comes to if you look at it like teams, it's so dangerous almost, because, oh shit, sorry, I just nudged my mic. I'm getting a bit expressive with my hands. It might be that whoever it is that you agree with on a certain thing says something that you actually don't necessarily agree with. It's not along the same lines as you. That should be okay, right? You should be able to have an opinion on something that's mostly in line with a thinker, a politician, whatever it might be, but they do something, or they have a policy, or they have an opinion which you question and you don't quite agree with. That should be okay, because at the end of the day, you're not that person. There's always going to be something that we all disagree on, Maybe they have a good argument for it. Maybe they can convince you of why they're right and you're wrong. Maybe it's the other way around, that they need convincing. But we protect ourselves from these confrontations. Either we just blindly follow, or we totally ignore. We don't see the value in other ideas that we instinctively disagree with, even though having that engagement with people is really important. And having that engagement with ourselves, I think that's the crucial thing about this, or where I was going, is that, we just need to be honest with ourselves, because, pardon me, sorry, that's not Corona. That's just because I've been talking for ages and I haven't had a drink, so let me just sip this. So yeah, pardon me. We're not honest with ourselves. And I think the honesty with ourselves is the first real step that we can take that's very important, because we need to challenge our own views. Often I feel like, I don't know if other people have this sort of understanding. If maybe I'm just weird. But I feel like there have been a lot of things where I've kind of had an opinion on something, and I've heard another argument, and part of me is a bit like, there's part of me that's maybe subconsciously just kind of makes sense, whatever. Or it doesn't even necessarily mean that, it's just an inkling that there's something, there's more to the picture than what I think it is. But I've often become so entrenched in my opinion of something that I just kind of push that aside. subconsciously I know that there's something more to look into, or to question, or to think about. But I set it aside because that kind of might make me question dogma that I have, right? And it is a dogma at that point when you have an opinion that's so protected by yourself. That's, it's scary. But I feel like all of us have these kinds of opinions, or, well, not necessarily opinions, but all of us have this tendency towards this because it's almost been conditioned into us by what's, things that are going on at the moment, the way that politics is, the way that a lot of thinkers are, and it used to be that, or it should be that we process what people say. We have our own opinions, but we leave them open to be challenged, right? By ourselves and by others. We listen to the arguments that someone has as unbiased as we possibly can. This is Adam's dream world, right? Or dream idea, this, I know it can never happen, but this is what I'm trying to do for myself. And at the end of the day, this is the point, is that it should be driven by ourselves as an individual to challenge ourselves, to leave our minds open enough to process these things that we disagree with, because I think it's important. Right, we have to leave our minds open when we're listening to people that we might disagree with, that we might instinctively knee-jerk reaction dislike or disagree with. And we have to kind of try and listen, play devil's advocate with ourselves. Listen to what they're saying, listen to what their assessment is, their opinion, what their reading of the situation is, because they might have, they might have a perspective that you never considered. And that's why they've come up with their side of the argument. But on the other side, it might also be that they haven't seen what you've seen, which is just as valuable. And that's why we need this is kind of exchange. Because two people can be right, but they're just viewing it through the lens of two different angles, right? And together, if they meet in a civil way, we could probably come up with a better idea together. And I know that's sort of so wishy-washy and, fucking dream world, blah, 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 whatever. I don't give a shit. My point is that, I guess, if we circle back to it, is that, we're responsible for how we process information, what we listen to, hear, read, and we should challenge ourselves. Because if your opinions can't stand scrutiny, if they don't stand up to, the challenges of the opposition, or I hate that term, opposition, but the other side, let's say, if they can't stand the scrutiny of that, then what's the point? How can you profess to be right if you won't even consider the other side of the coin? You won't see the value in their arguments, challenge it, come up with something else. And maybe that's idealistic, maybe that's dream world. But I think if everyone tries to do that, opens their mind up to what other people are saying, thinking, and why they think that way, we'll have a much better opportunity to have an exchange of ideas and hopefully come up with something new together that satisfies as many people as possible, right? I guess what I'm trying to say is be open. Have a think. And it's a new beginning because I'm going to fucking say it so many times so I can ham fist it in so that we can all know that this episode is going to be called New Beginnings and that's the theme of the episode. And I'm getting kind of loose with the theme, but I think it is one thing because for myself personally, I felt that I was definitely getting into like a bubble. I was definitely in a position where I had these, these arguments, these perspectives, these views, which I thought were, watertight. Because when you're in a bubble, it's easy to be watertight because the version of the opposition argument or the other side's argument is that, you're viewing their side as all idiots and they don't have any value. And you're coming up with like a caricature of what their opinion is, right? You kind of accidentally strawman them because amongst yourselves, you're kind of not actually engaging with their ideas. And the problem with that is that you end up at that point not actually discussing the merits and shortfalls of what their view is. You're arguing against a cartoon that you've created in your head that you think they believe. And I think when push comes to shove, with most issues, most of the time, every side, whatever side you're arguing from, is thinking, they know that what the problem is. The problem has been identified. The same, everyone's addressing the same problem. But our views of what the other side's opinion of the problem is, or what we think they think the problem is different. And so we end up, building these personas of the other side and not actually discussing the issues from a level playing field. And it's no wonder at that point why so many people just get enraged with each other and start name-calling for no good reason. And I think it's just a waste of time and energy, right? But it starts with you, It starts with me. I have to really, really keep an eye on myself. I have to, make sure that I'm being open, make sure that I'm being honest with what I think, being honest when I don't have an opinion on something, not just coming up with one that sounds right with whatever my side is. I have to be open to listening to people that I might disagree with, to anyone. But then I also have to be open to learning, right? Because at the end of the day, someone else has a perspective of something that I don't know. And that can change your life, right? You can open your eyes up to something completely different and completely new. And that's kind of brilliant, because if you leave yourself open to these kinds of discussions, if you allow yourself to be challenged, you can synthesize all sorts of new thoughts and ideas. You can have whole new perspectives of what people are thinking. And the same thing is happening for other people when you give them a chance and then they give you a chance. And you guys can kind of come up with new ideas, brilliant ideas, which are the best of both worlds, And of course, that's, fucking sunshine and rainbows. And it's never going to be that simple. But I hope that the message rings true, is that, you can definitely we can be better to each other and to ourselves. And we can become smarter if we just treat other people like they are thinking human beings as well, with valid opinions, even if we disagree with them. There's value in understanding where they come from, why they think the way they do. Hopefully they can see value in why you have certain arguments. Recently I watched, I guess this is sort of a tangent, but speaking on, the new beginning side of this, we're going to go back to it. The new beginning side of this is that, for me, it's trying to be open. I probably said this about 3 times now. I can't even remember. But whatever. I will barely edit this, so it's just going to be fucking raw shit. But anyway, the point is that my new beginning is trying to be open, trying to challenge myself, to be honest with myself when I don't know something, to be honest with myself when I'm not proud of myself, to be honest when I'm bringing up my ideas and my opinions to others, hopefully, but to also do it in a way that's not challenging, to do it in a way that leaves it open, because at the end of the day, I want to be challenged. I want to be put under scrutiny. I want to know that my opinion is definitely right. Because if it's wrong, even a little bit, there's room to improve then, right? And if we think along those lines, surely we can do nothing but have better ideas in the future. Surely, right? But anyway, I was going to go on to a little story. So I was listening to this guy called Daryl Davis. He's like a blues musician, but he's done like a TED talk, which is brilliant. Listen to it. He tells the story a million times better than I'm going to butcher it. He was also on Joe Rogan Experience. Again, he elaborated on this and so much more, and generally talked more about his view of things. But he's an African American. And he's determined to find out why are people racist, Why are there white nationalists? Why are there white ethnostatists? Why are the KKK a thing, That's been a key motivator for him, to the point where he, and, again, listen to his story if you haven't already. If you're even listening to this. But anyway, yeah, so he has gone so far to the point that he's actually befriended neo-Nazis, KKK members, and he's just engaged with them. He's sat down with them, essentially offered an olive branch to have a discussion, to understand their ideas, to listen, to process it, to, think about their angle, where they're coming from, to think about the problems that they perceive, to find some kind of common ground, because, there are, I mean, even with people that we think are abhorrent, there are certain things we agree with, that we want things to be safer, that we want, plenty of food for everyone, whatever it might be. You can always find common ground with someone, unless they're, unless they're Satan, where they just want the fucking world to burn. But anyway, you can always find common ground with someone. And using that, I mean, you get the sense from hearing his story that coming from a place of kindness, from mutual respect for one another, you can then open the door for people to think about their own views, to actually challenge themselves, because a lot of the time, people who are so ingrained in these extreme and highly radical, to an extent, ideologies that we find abhorrent, they've kind of never challenged their views. They've never, in the case of a lot of the KKK, for example, they've never met a black man, really. They've never sat down and talked to them. And even just sitting there and talking to them as a respecting, listening human being, to people that you might find abhorrent, you can open the door for them to realize that actually you aren't that bad. The person that they were making fun of, demonizing, thinking wanted to ruin their country or their world or their views or whatever, they'll realize that you're actually a human being as well, that you care for a lot of similar things. You like the same music. There are things in common between all of us. And then that opens the door in turn for them to eventually, potentially, if, say, you're Daryl Davis talking to a member of the KKK, renounce their membership to try and be better, to improve, and to be more accepting and open of other people. I think there's power. There's a lot of power in that. Because the more we listen, the more we sort of reflect on ourselves and our opinions and open ourselves up to challenge, the more we can encourage other people to do that. Hopefully, build a better world together. Anyway, this got really sort of, I guess, soppy and shit towards the end, but yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you're even listening. I mean, if you're not, cool. If you like it, great, thank you. I have no idea when I'm going to upload this, but I'm figuring it out. I don't have internet in this flat for well over a week, so it'll be up at some point. And who knows, maybe by the time it's up, we'll be out of the coronavirus pandemic, and you will be getting back into your life, doing all that sort of stuff. But I think the important thing about new beginnings is that you don't need a coronavirus pandemic to start. It can happen any time. The problem is, and the biggest obstacle is yourself. And I mean, as fucking, new age, fucking whatever, I'm trying to be smart and cool. You just gotta motivate yourself, whatever. I mean, there's truth though in that, right? Because I feel like most of the time whenever I've kind of, wanted to do something like this podcast, like the podcast with my friends, it's just I've been the obstacle, right? I've come up with excuses. I've been like, oh, well, don't have much time today. This is happening then. But all I would have had to have done was find time somewhere and just do it. So maybe for you that's, turning off the PlayStation and, doing some press-ups. Maybe it's going for a run. And if you are going to go for a run, highly recommend Couch to 5K. That's how I started. It's great. But maybe that's, maybe that's reading a book. Maybe it's recording a podcast. Just do it. Find the time. Schedule it in. Make time for your new beginning. Because I guarantee you'll feel better for it. You'll enjoy it. And it will be worth it. Or if you don't enjoy it, you've learned, right? You've learned that it wasn't for you. It wasn't meant to be something that you were going to do anyway. But you gave it a try. It's no longer one of those coulda beens. It's, I gave that a go. Didn't like it. It wasn't as good as I thought. Great. You cross that one off the list and you can go and do something else. But just do it. Give it a go. I've kind of been recording for like 55 minutes, so we'll see. I wanted to, I guess, close off with a quote. It's one of my favorite quotes. And I'll probably say it quite a lot during this. But it's a quote from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor philosopher that I was talking about, and who actually I've been using a lot as a kind of guide towards this kind of trying to understand yourself a bit better and trying to just focus on what needs to be done. But yeah, he said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You've been listening to the Peppermint Philosophy podcast. Thank you for listening. I will see you in the next one, whenever that might be.